Welcome back to our America's 250th podcast series. As America celebrates its 250th birthday, we're sharing stories of people whose lives reflect the values of service, sacrifice, and dedication that have shaped our nation. On this episode, we're remembering Frank Scarfo, a Torrance resident, Army veteran, and congressional honoree whose remarkable journey took him from military intelligence in Italy to supporting America's space program. Joining me today is someone who knew Frank personally and can help us better understand the man behind the incredible story. Before we get into talking about Frank, first, can you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about how you knew him?
I'm Richard Heon. I was a friend of Frank Scarfo's for almost 30 years. And I used to bring my mom and her best friend to a donut shop over on Sepulveda and Western in Torrance, Harbor City area. This very interesting man used to come in all the time, and it was Frank Scarfo. And he was very friendly with everybody, and we spoke and got to know each other, week after week. And all of a sudden, one day, he invited me over to his home and met his collie dog, Lassie, and then had a scrapbook and started showing me pictures of his military service and all that he had done.
And tell me a little bit about Frank's passing. That was in May, right?
Yeah, that was on the 2nd. He would have been actually 98 on the 31st.
Can you tell us, for those watching that may not know, a little bit about his history?
Yeah, Frank grew up in Norton, West Virginia. They were a coal mining family, and Frank couldn't even speak English, only Italian. Educated himself and went through high school and college with honors. And then he graduated from there, and the draft was starting for the military. And he was given the option to go to counter-espionage school for secret agents and spies, Fort Holabird. And at that time, it was the first school of that kind in the United States. Frank attended and graduated from there.
He was honored in Torrance. What is his connection to Torrance?
Frank moved out here many years ago. His family came out from West Virginia with his sister and his mom and dad. Then he started buying property into the city of Torrance. Just basically loved it. He still considered West Virginia his home. Really loved the city of Torrance and decided to stay here.
After you got to see the scrapbook and stuff, did you kind of keep in touch and go see him often?
He started inviting me to lunch and dinner. Throughout his entire career, he worked for Aerospace Corporation here in El Segundo when he came out. He didn't have a lot of time between that and his whole military thing and being on the moon mission with Von Braun. We started just going out and became good pals.
What do you think is the most interesting story that he told you?
There's so many things. When he was deployed to Italy, basically all hell broke out in Italy, and they needed somebody there, a point man. They gave him a staff car and they sent him to Italy. So he did the entire theater of operations there in Italy, and it was really interesting, all the things they did. They used to get American cigarettes, and he didn't smoke, and he would trade them to the Italians and became best friends with everybody on that, because in those days, everybody smoked, as you know.
Yeah.
He really loved it. He got to be allowed to go on top of the Leaning Tower of Pisa, which most people couldn't go inside at that time. He was really proud of that moment in his life. Mr. Scarfo and Dr. Von Braun were the two people who were called into New Mexico to the alien craft. Hello, Torrance and the world. You're going to hear it right here from these guys. And he said, yes, the alien craft did exist. And there were no aliens, but it was the early day of computers, and they couldn't figure out what fuel they used.
Interesting. That is so. What else did he tell you about that? Like going out there to see that?
He just said that they got a call one day, and they needed some experts to go in, and that he was called in with Dr. Von Braun. He was actually on the entire moon mission from the start when we circled the Earth for the first time, and in 1961. And I have the actual Life magazine from that. But they said at Aerospace Corporation, it was kind of a funny thing. They said, there's no record of Mr. Scarfo ever existing.
Huh. Why is that?
Because at that time, it was a big race with the Russians to get to the moon first. And what I think, he's probably would have been kidnapped or something like that to glean any information that they could get out of him.
That's crazy.
And but when you look at his bank records, there's always every month a retirement check coming in from Aerospace Corporation for the man who didn't exist.
That's so funny. That's so interesting. I've never met anyone that has known anyone in a position like that, or met anyone in a position like that. What was that like to hear all of that from him?
For me, the more we knew and the more we found out, and now even at his death, finding all these different things like the graduation picture, as I mentioned, from Secret Agent and Spy School. I'm sure that probably wasn't supposed to be out because, as he told me, they were all dispatched one at a time. It was so secretive and so private leaving Fort Holabird, because if you were captured, they didn't want anybody to know where you were. At one point, the historian for the Medal of Honor Foundation asked me and says, "Richard, ask Mr. Scarfo how many people were in the first schools for spies and secret agents, because nobody knows." And he was so sharp up until the very end. They really picked the ones with good cerebral. And he said instantly 70. And she was on the phone. She was dancing on the phone. You could tell, she goes, "Oh my God, now we know." Nobody knew. And as you saw on the back of the picture, I believe it says there were 53 graduates in his class of the 70. And it actually shows the faces and everything like that. And you are welcome to go ahead and put that in your podcast, because nobody in the world has ever seen that just about.
That's amazing. That's so cool that you got to have a relationship with Mr. Scarfo and be a part of all of these things that you're saying, like no one knows, no one's ever seen these before.
Mm-hmm. And originally, I believe he was supposed to be dispatched to South America. Mm-hmm. And we found a box of, if you want to call it, secret agent spy money in his house. And there were big stacks of money from nations in South America all over the place. To where what we figured is when he was dispatched there, you didn't want to walk into a bank, the guy from the U.S., an Italian guy,
right?
And taking out large denominations of money, and everybody say, "Oh my God, call the cops with this guy too." So they brought their own cash when they went and infiltrated. And since he never went, he was redeployed to Italy, and so all of this remains as a souvenir for history.
He received a congressional recognition for his service later on. What did he say that meant to him?
That really touched his heart, because he didn't even know it was happening. I hid it from him, and I told him, "Well, we're going over to Torrance City Hall tonight because you've got to sign some final documents to see if they can investigate you." But what really had taken place at that time, the halls of Congress, the people with the congressional records had military people from all over the country calling me, asking me questions and stuff like that. And everybody who called said, "Yep, this sounds exactly what we should be hearing."
And were you there at the council meeting with him when he received that?
Yes. I brought him over, and he didn't know anything was going on. I thought he was going to pass out. He was so shocked. The Congresswoman's aide was there, Hamilton Cloud. He presented the honor for going to Fort Holabird.
We're lucky that we have Frank's history kind of embedded here in Torrance since he was here. How do you feel knowing that you kind of have some of his history embedded in you? I mean, you're carrying on his legacy now.
Yeah, and we found another young man too, Ian, and I think he's so interested in all of this history and everything like that. And we've been looking for somebody to pass on some of this memorabilia to, because, we're getting older. We're not going to be around forever, and we want to make sure it has a good place in history to go ahead. And I'm going to donate some of the items to the Medal of Honor Foundation historian, so they can keep some of the things in their archives.
Why do you think it's important for future generations to remember these stories?
Because it's really what made America and made our country. When he went to Italy, the communists were infiltrating American command. And he said that they actually caught people who were impersonating American officers.
That is crazy. And I just keep coming back in my head to the fact that you said he was such a humble guy. Why do you think that is?
It was the small town roots, I think. He came from small town America and that lifestyle, but he still loved coming out to California and with his family, and that's why he chose to stay here in California. Obviously, we've got the fantastic weather, but he really liked the people out here too as well.
I love that. What does your friendship with him mean to you going forward?
He was a good person to be a friend. He was always there in your corner. Frank was the kind of person who always said, "What can I do for you?" Not what can you do for me or how can you help me or anything like that. It was always the other way around. He said, "What can I do for you? Can I help you?" And, "Nicole, glad to have met you. I'm glad to be your friend." If he was sitting here today, he'd be shaking your hand, looking you in the eye. He'd say, "Man, I'm so glad to be your friend."
That's amazing. Do you think that inspires you to kind of live that way?
Oh, yeah, of course. And he's so humble, but yet an American hero and legend. And you can imagine the risks that they took, arresting the communists in Italy and everything, and then coming back and losing part of his hearing for our nation, helping build the entire moon program. We have pictures of the von Braun team assembling, and a picture of Frank Scarfo 30 minutes before we landed on the moon, and the von Braun team's assembling there at Cape Canaveral in Florida.
That's amazing.
What an exciting, exhilarating, time it must have been in his life as a young man.
Yeah, I just want to thank you for kind of keeping all of this information and history alive and being so passionate about it. Why do you think you're so passionate about it?
Well, I've always loved history, and I love meeting people. That's my life's passion, is meeting new people and meeting nice people. And our friend Jim, he invented the world's first working laser beam, and he lives in Orange County.
That's awesome.
Yeah, he showed it to me. It looked like a little cannon, like something on Wild Wild West. And on top, it had two things that opened up where the prism beams would go. And Jim said he sent it to the Smithsonian, and they said, "Oh, it doesn't work." And he asked me, man of no knowledge on something like that. He says, "Why do you think?" And I says, "Well, did they put the prism beams in backwards, the prisms?" He says, "That's exactly right."
Whoa. And you have no experience
No,
with
I
that.
just off of common sense. And then they called them back a half an hour later and says, "Oh my God, it does work."
You should have gotten paid for that.
Oh, yes. But that's where all the laser surgery and everything else that we have today stems from that. And he's another Frank Scarfo, just so humble. He would never brag about himself. All the people that really did the true work, for our country, that all you young people watching, you should take light. And when they asked Mr. Scarfo what he thinks that this next generation, he said, just follow your passion. He says, get a good education in whatever you want to learn and pursue your passion. And that's what he did his entire life, is just pursued his passion. And that's why we're here today and all the things that he did.
Yeah. And I think another thing that we can all take away from this, just from you, is like surrounding yourself with people with such rich history and such great experiences.
I talk to everybody. If I met you on the street, I'd be talking to you. So I bumped into a lot of different people like that in my lifetime. Thank God. It was a real blessing to meet them all. As we go through Frank's things and find different pieces of information in his house, things that we didn't even know. Being the secret agent guy that he was, he even had in one of the bedrooms a private hole going down in the floor where it was like his spy safe, and he had a treasure map going in there and everything.
My gosh.
The old days. Yeah.
That's here in Torrance?
Yes, right here in Torrance.
So there's a house here in Torrance with a secret hole and a treasure map.
Oh yeah, I've got a picture of it, yes.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
You learn something new every day.
Oh yeah, he did all that. All the treasure has been taken out of it now at this point, but he had all that and did all that too.
If there was one thing that you want people to take away from watching this podcast, what would it be?
Just be nice to everybody. Be a good person. And like Frank said, follow your passion, whatever it is, big or little. Follow your life's dream. I think that's what Frank was really trying to put out there in the first podcast, to follow your life's dream. And I don't think you're ever going to go wrong with that.
I think that's the best advice. If you could describe Frank in 3 words, what would they be?
Very meticulous about detail, a good friend to everybody. When Mr. Scarfo came home from the hospital, he really wanted to be home and be with his dog, Lassie, his German Shepherd. Oh, what a lover she is. And the nurse said, "Mr. Scarfo, let me tell you, you didn't live a good life." He said, "You lived 5 charmed, perfect lives." And he just really was right with all the things that Frank had done for our nation and for the world and all the things he had experienced. But he never bragged about anything.
Really?
It was all just, "Oh, it's doing my job." We had to pry the information out of him and ask him about, all of those things. And as you said, toward the end, he was getting more hard of hearing. We had to get him hearing aids because of the moon mission. Back then, they only had corks to put in the ears.
Interesting. I think that what you said about him being so humble and saying, "I was just doing my job," is something that we've heard a lot talking to different veterans or service members. And with this year being America's 250th birthday, I think it's so important that we give those people that recognition that they are so humble and so shy about. How do you think that Mr. Scarfo, his legacy is left for America's 250th? How do you think that aligns?
Oh, I think it's just God's blessing, perfect timing, with all of this coming. And with all the interest now in the UFOs and the moon.
Is there anything else that you want to add or share about Frank or anything?
Just thank you to also to Congresswoman Maxine Waters, because he would want her mentioned, because she's the one, her and her staff, who went ahead and inducted Mr. Scarfo into the congressional records.
I think that's so amazing that you helped to kickstart that and give Frank the recognition that he really deserved.
A great life, a great long life, as almost 98 years old. Just pleased to have been his friend, pleased to be able to keep his life's history. And that's the one thing I really would like to do, is just have somebody just to keep his life's history and keep passing the story on for the next generations, because he may be the last living member of the Dr. Von Braun team. As a matter of fact, I even saw a couple of people on the news say when Frank was alive, oh, well, now that we know that there's nobody left alive from all of those things, and that was incorrect, because Frank Scarfo was still alive.
That's so interesting. Well, thank you so much for sharing all of this great history, and I loved hearing how passionate you are about your friendship with him and all the work that he did for our country.
Oh, yeah, and thank you so much to you and your staff. You guys really do just a magnificent job.
And everyone, please catch up with the rest of our America's 250th podcast series on our YouTube channel, and feel free to follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube.